All right, good morning. Thank you for joining in. I'm Dawn Sizer, CEO of Third Element Consulting. We are a woman-owned MSP in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, and recently we were ranked on the CRN MSP 500 list. We've been in business since 2006. And then personally, I have an MBA in IT management, but more importantly, and one of the reasons that we're doing this webinar is that my husband and I have an autistic kiddo that's almost 21. In fact, he's got a couple days to his 21st birthday. So over the years, we've been through brick and mortar and cyber schools with him, the latter more successful than the former. He was able to graduate from cyber school with honors and with his peers with a regular diploma. Most schools that are offering autistic classes only offer a graduation certificate and not a diploma for their autistic students. He's gotten to experience some college. He actually got to go for a communications class, which I thought was going to be kryptonite for him, but he did very well, so we were very pleased with that. And then when the services that were available for work came around when he was old enough, what we found is that there really aren't any services for job training. In Pennsylvania, we have the option for a subsidized job training program where some employers will allow neurodiverse adults to come to work there for anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks, depending on the employer. They are then paid by the state agency, not the employer. And then that's it. They've had a job. They can then attempt to get another job, but they haven't had the training on how to get a job, just the job itself. But then the state can say that they've had a job, which is normally sweeping floors, clearing tables, and the like. Now, as a parent, that's not really exciting, especially when you have a child who has graduated from high school with honors. Sweeping floors is not really what I wanted for his future, and I'm hoping that's not what he wanted either. So we set out to find a way for inclusion in our company in a way that made sense for everyone, and as well as the company culture itself. So today I'm going to share how we included neurodiversity in our company culture. I know I have autism up there on the slide, but I thought it would be better to widen it to include a few other things that can either act like autism or that can be a part of autism. And those things are apraxia of speech, which is the difficulty coordinating motor movements for speech. You'll experience it as a long pause between asking questions and getting an answer from a person that's neurodiverse. Attention deficit disorder, which you experience as inattentiveness, impulsivity, or hyperactivity. Dyspraxia, which is a coordination disorder. You experience it as seeing somebody who is inordinately clumsy. Dyslexia, which is the jumbling of letters, which can make it difficult for someone to read or write. Dyscalculia, which is dyslexia for numbers specifically. And Tourette syndrome, which is involuntary motor tics. Most of the time they have a vocal component to them. So all of those things share a commonality of different brain wiring or thinking, and many of these disorders may exist together, especially in an autistic person. But for most neurodiverse people, they'll have a little bit of all of it in some way, shape, or form. So to that end, we'll be addressing the communication, self-expression, and support systems that enable the neurodiverse to become a part of your company's culture and in turn, a great employee. So in the last year and a half, we started hiring. We've grown a good bit, and we saw a large spike in neurodiversity with our employment candidates. Based on the interviews that we've had, we figure it's up about 40% from what we've seen previously. And again, we're talking about Central PA here, and we're in the 20 to 30 age group, and maybe it's a little bit higher since we can't actually ask the candidates. So that spike could be for any number of reasons. It could be because unemployment is very low right now, especially in the tech field. It could be that those neurodiverse people are getting passed over in most companies. So we're seeing more of them just simply because there are more of them that are unemployed. And it could be that there's just a true higher percentage of neurodiverse people that gravitate towards IT. We don't really know. It could be completely random. What we do know for sure, though, is that we have an autistic employee. He's been with us for 3 years since he graduated. So I can give you some insight to what has worked and what doesn't. We've had some hilarious yet bad results with some of the things that we've tried, and I'll elaborate more on those later. But it's usually going to boil down to the language that they use and how they perceive it. And so we designed a hiring and onboarding program for everyone that takes neurodiversity into account. So today we are going to cover why you should consider hiring a neurodiverse individual. We want to talk about how to rethink the hiring process from your initial screening to the in-person interview, what your onboarding can look like, the types of supports the employee and you as a business owner should have in place in order to be successful. Probably some of them that you already do, and a couple of them you may just need to clarify or make a little more direct. What reasonable accommodations you might want to include. And for those of you that are tuning in from other places, these are going to be specific to the laws for the United States. And then we want to talk a little bit about how to be understood by neurodiverse persons as well. And yes, your words really do matter to them. So that said, why even bother hiring somebody who's neurodiverse? It seems like it's going to be a whole lot of work, right? Well, I've been in IT for more years than I really want to tell you about, but it's been more than 20. And knowing the types of people in IT that I've come across and other people have come across, you probably already have hired somebody who's been neurodiverse. You may not have known it because they were undiagnosed, or maybe they just didn't disclose it to you, or maybe you didn't have the tools to recognize what it was that you were looking at. Neurodiversity can range from simple issues concentrating or communicating to being nonverbal and in their own world. It truly is a spectrum disorder, and you're going to see all ends of the spectrum. With autism especially, it's said that if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. So everyone and their issues and the severity to which you experience them are different. Now, you may have noticed that I've said how you experience things, and that's really the truth of all of this. It is all about how you are experiencing their issue because they don't necessarily realize that anything is different for them. So it's how you're experiencing it. So let's think back to people that either you've had to terminate yourself or have been terminated over the years for different reasons that you've worked with. There was probably somebody who didn't seem to be able to follow what seemed like simple verbal directions, had no idea what they were doing, and just couldn't do the work because they didn't understand what you were asking them. Maybe there was someone that forever looked at anything other than you when they talked and they mumbled a lot. And what about that person that couldn't function if their schedule changed midday? And then let's talk about the people who have impulse control issues. They act before they think anything through, and they don't realize that there's going to be ramifications from what they've done. Or how about that person that was just a serial procrastinator? Or the forgetful person? They would forget tools or equipment that was needed for a job or a project. That would then necessitate multiple site visits, which made everyone around them extremely angry and crazy because they couldn't figure out why they had to go back and redo things 10 times. All of these things that I'm talking about are hallmarks of a neurodiverse person. The good news is that for each one of these bad things that we've just mentioned, there are some really great attributes that balance them. especially if you have some easy to implement supports that are going to benefit all of your employees, not just the neurodiverse ones. So let's take a look at what those positives are. So SAP, which is an enormous software group, did a study in their organization and found that they had a 98% autistic employee retention rate, which is huge. The average small business retention rate fluctuates between 75 and 90%, depending on the exact industry. You can't pay for the type of loyalty that you get from a neurodiverse person. I mean, a 98% retention rate is so huge. Let's talk a little bit about corporate social responsibility as well. The angle of social responsibility and your business, using it to your best advantage. If you are already trying to align some business goals to accomplish something like that, you can start telling people that hiring neurodiverse individuals that are underemployed but employable, it's a huge thing. People tend to really take notice to what you're doing because it is a social responsibility issue. The reason that it is, just autistic adults themselves currently cost taxpayers in the United States $250 billion a year in lost productivity and interventions. Only 12% of those on the spectrum are employed, according to the Asperger Autism Network. That leaves about 88% that are unemployed. So use it as a talking point within your community and client base. It does improve your public image. It can increase your media coverage. One of the big things for us is that we've seen it boost our employee engagement. It's unreal, the amount of talking points that we have just in our office. And for those of you that know Connor, the other employees have engaged with him as well, which has kind of brought him out of his shell. It's fantastic. It can also attract different clients or types of clients. It'll attract different types of employees, better employees, honestly. And if you're looking at investors as well, it will attract different types of investors. So honesty is really funny with autistic people. They aren't capable of true deceit. Their ability to lie is really awful. Most of the time, it's humorous as well. So there's a double-edged sword that comes along with honesty with an autistic person. If you're going to ask them for an opinion, you're going to get one, and it's going to be brutally honest. So kind of be careful what you ask for there. So their reliability, if they know that they're going to be responsible for something, they're going to take it very seriously. They're going to be on time for work. They're going to have their materials. They're going to be doing their job. As long as you let them know what's expected and there's a rule set that goes with it, they're going to follow it specifically to those things. They're also very non-judgmental. They're not going to judge other people. They're not prejudiced. They just don't have that in their makeup. They see people for themselves and not much else, unless that they have learned that a person can't be trusted. And that takes time because they're going to keep trusting them until they get hurt. So that's something that you need to consider within your culture. You know your employees, you know the people that you work with. If you have a bad apple that generally takes advantage of others, chances are the neurodiverse person is going to be exploited for their gain. So their attention to detail is amazing. You want them to look for something, they're going to hunt till it's either found or it truly cannot be found. This is also going to apply to memory. Anything that they've seen or heard, depending on the person, is going to be retained for long periods. And that one, again, can be good or bad. Let's just say I'm still hearing about something that I said 10 years ago, and it's never going to die. Their efficiency is better since they're not going to be bothered with consistent socializing or office gossip. They don't have the social skills to pull it off, for starters, but socializing is scary, so they're going to avoid it. And it can be a little bit difficult as well. So that's something that you may actually have to facilitate a little bit. They are able to follow and initiate logic structures. Again, it's that rule-based scenario. As long as you have rules in place, they're going to follow them to the letter, which makes them phenomenal coders. It makes them phenomenal mathematicians. They're going to follow directions without wavering. Focus is really good as well. Many of them can focus on specific things or tasks for long periods. They can even do something called hyperfocus, which means that they can turn out the rest of the world and focus on a specific task until that task is done. They're also going to have a tolerance for repetition. Something that can be reproduced over and over and over again that gives them a good result is a fantastic job for any autistic person. To give you an example, Connor preps machines for us. It has a certain set of rules. He follows them. We have a good outcome at the end, and then he can do it over and over and over again. Again, tolerance for repetition. It's comforting. It's enjoyable. It's something that is a known for them. So those are some really positive things. And one of the other things that we want to take a look at after that, since we do know that there are positive things, how do we rethink hiring someone like this? Well, I know that everybody interviews differently. We interview different from all of you that are tuned in here today. And I'm not telling you that you need to completely reshape your interview process. It may be really effective. But I am going to show you how we do it and what you can add to it to make it more accommodating when you need it to be. So think of it as getting a plan B if you think that you're dealing with somebody who is neurodiverse. Chances are that person is going to interview extremely poorly for a lot of reasons. And it could be anything from never making eye contact with you or any of the other interviewers, or they could just be fidgety. I mean, to the point of like you would swear that they're doing drugs on the side. They're that fidgety. They're going to be nervous. So what should your plan B include? Let's take a look at that. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that you're already looking at more than just who interviews best instead of, just the person that interviews best isn't always the best person for the job. You want to be making sure that you are looking for the best candidate here. And I can sure that we can all agree that those who interview well aren't always the best hire long-term. And that's even with neurotypical candidates. Interviews sometimes go poorly, so we have adjusted our interview process to account for some of the things that we thought would help everyone. So when we got our candidates to submit a resume, and we go through our resumes, once we have a list of them, we take a look at who we actually want to talk to. When we contact those candidates, we give them an outline of what the interview is going to involve. We tell them up front that we do a two-phase process. The first interview is a get-to-know-you style interview so that they can come prepared to talk about themselves. And then before we bother with a technical interview, we want to make sure that they're going to fit with the company culture and that they're willing to get their certifications and continue learning. So you just need to augment that with whatever it is that you require for your particular organization. If they then meet that criteria that we're looking for, they get invited back to a technical interview. So our second phase of our interview process is the technical. We tell them up front the topics that we're going to be covering and that we're covering those specific ones to gauge where their skill levels are. They may or may not know the answers to the questions, and that's okay. We supply the types of questions that we're planning to ask ahead of time. And we're sure to remind them that they may have some special skills that are going to set them apart from other candidates. So we want to make sure that they tell us about those as well. And what we found is that most candidates actually do have some wild skills. Some of them can be applied to what you're doing, some of them not, but it is kind of neat to find out what they are. So the two-phase interview for us is very effective. It allows us to get a second look at everyone. It allows us to watch for any red flags that pop up so that we can address them if we see them. And also, it allows the candidate, if we're addressing them, to talk about those red flags and what they might mean. So it goes back to not every candidate interviews well, even if they are the best person for the job. So we just want to make sure that we address everything that needs to get addressed up front. Then, depending on your candidate, you may need to allow some extra time for them to form the words necessary for verbal answers. That's that dyspraxia that we talked about earlier. It may seem to you like it's an inordinately long pause and they might be staring at the table and panicking a little bit, but that might be what it actually is. So give them the time to give you an answer. Make sure that you are direct and literal with every one of your interview questions. Don't use plays on words. Try not to use jokes or idioms. If any one of these people that you're interviewing is on the spectrum, you're going to have a very confused candidate who will only get more nervous and fidgety if they don't know what you mean or if they're confused by the meaning of what you're asking. Your typical candidates are going to be nervous anyway, and it takes the uncertainty out for everyone. So use examples where possible. Story-based questions, scenario-based questions, kind of walk them through what you need them to understand. That way you're providing something for reference, so there's just no mutual mystification on anybody's part. Don't use yes or no questions. A neurotypical person will answer and not elaborate. A neurodiverse person will give you a yes or a no answer. They will stop, that'll be it. And you're kind of wondering why they're not giving you additional information. The other thing is if you have somebody that has Asperger's, which is a form of autism, they may give you, the answer to the yes or no, and then they're going to elaborate for 3 hours, and you'll wish you'll have never asked. So ask your questions in a way that kind of avoid the yes or no, or at least allow you to say, this is the question I need to have answered. It should have this type of answer, and then you'll be good to go. And then depending on the position, you can allow them to bring something that they've done previously to show their ability. So let them bring an example if that is something that works for you. To judge the skills that are required for the job, you might want to create a show and not tell for candidate abilities. For us, we can set something up in the lab for a skills demonstration and we can watch what they're doing and how they're doing it. That way we get that show me option. Show me what you understand. Show me what you know. Show me how you do it. And then if you know that you're dealing with somebody that is on the spectrum or is neurodiverse because it has been already disclosed to you, or you might be working with an agency that's trying to fill a job and they know that information and they've disclosed it to you, you might want to offer a day or a few days trial. That will enable you to qualify the candidate based on their actual skills and not just what you're seeing on paper or what they've talked to you about. Now, the last thing on the list here is a support person, which sounds really weird, but for especially an autistic person who has communication issues, what this support person is designed to do is to interpret questions in ways that the candidate would understand or to help clarify answers given by the candidate. This is important if you're not sure how to rephrase your interview questions for a neurodiverse person. The support person is not there to answer for them, only to rephrase what they're saying or to clarify. That's all the support person is for. So once you've decided that you're going to hire a neurodiverse person, you're going to need to onboard them and get them to be a part of your company. So much like the hiring process, you probably already have a great onboarding process. We've made changes to ours, and we've had a significant increase in retention and adoption of the company culture because of it. Again, our way isn't the only way, but we found it to be very effective for all employees, not just the neurodiverse ones. So we do a 90-day onboard for all of our employees. After 2 weeks and 4 weeks, we offer the new employee money to quit, which sounds ridiculous. You just hired somebody. Why would you offer them money to quit? Well, we offer them $1,000 after the first 2 weeks and $2,000 at 4 weeks to just leave. It's going to cost more to train them. So if they're willing to take the cash, it will save you money in the long run. So now on to what the onboarding actually looks like. So our onboarding is standardized. It's much the same for the first few days for everybody that we hire. It doesn't matter the type of employee that gets hired. When they are hired, they get a copy of the onboarding, so they have it even before they start. And again, we have a standardized program. First day is the same for everyone. I actually make them breakfast in our office kitchen. We chat, we go over all the hiring paperwork. I answer any questions they might have. It's just a nice way to get to know someone. And so far, everyone, while nervous, seems to enjoy the personalization of it. So the important parts of the onboarding process for those who are neurodiverse is that the day is broken down into parts. They can see what to expect and when. The sections are clearly defined as to what they will be doing and for how long. And this is going to alleviate some of the anxiety of a new situation, in new surroundings, with new people. And again, everybody on their first day of work is going to be nervous anyway. This will help everyone, not just the neurodiverse people. So you'll see that any place that we have courses listed, obviously you can't see the clickable links on here because it's a slide, but they're a clickable link that will allow the person to go directly to the course, so there's no need to guess where things are or to hunt somebody down to ask, where do I find this thing? How do I log in? They have all of that ahead of time. And the other thing I want to mention is that if you haven't yet, make sure that you start adding soft skills to your onboarding. These are common sense for some people, but they are not common sense for everyone, and they're no longer taught in school. If you're getting candidates where your company may be their first job or one of their first professional jobs, these soft skills are going to help with the confidence and interaction that your candidates and hires are going to need. So things that we've added in are communication, listening skills, connecting with peers, and teamwork. Anything like that in any combination is going to be fantastic. And again, these skills aren't just for the neurodiverse candidates. They're a great baseline for any employee that has to act with team members or with clients. Phone skills are another soft skill to add. Many, especially new hires that either haven't had a job previously or if this is their first professional job, they're going to either want to text or chat more than pick up a phone and call. So learning how to do professional phone calls is a little difficult, and it's going to be difficult for everyone. So again, phone skills, great soft skill, add that to your onboarding. The other thing, I don't know that you've noticed already, but we require homework. It is daily for the first month of employment. We're also going to assign a book to them to read, or if they are neurodiverse and have trouble with written language, they're going to get an audio book that they can listen to, or maybe TED Talks to watch and summarize instead. And if you've never seen a TED Talk, by all means do so. They are anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes, and they're just jam-packed with fantastic information. So whether it's a written book, an audio book, or a TED Talk, they're all going to be the same topic, so it's not like anybody gets something that's easier. It's just in the medium that they resonate with the best, and it's going to work for them. So our homework is simple. It's a summary of the day. What did you do? Who did you spend it with? What did you learn? And what questions do you have? Because you're always going to have some questions. When you require that they put their questions in writing, one, you can either address it because you forgot something in your onboarding, which we found that that's a thing, so make sure that they give you their questions in writing. You have a record of it, and you also have a record that you've answered that question to that person as well. So we've gotten responses to our written summaries that span everything from amusing stories to simple summaries. Everybody is different, but it has to be done. There are no exceptions to our homework. We will terminate those who don't complete homework, book reports, or their summaries by the due date. We all know that an employee generally gives you the best work the first couple days after they start. And if they're not up to doing the requirements of the job, then they're not going to do it later either. So again, it costs a lot of money to train people. Weed them out as fast as you can, and this is one way to do it. So we've set up the first 4 weeks as a daily schedule, looks like the ones that you're seeing right there on your screen. The second and third months are a little bit looser depending on their job function. So whatever works for the job functions that you're filling and the type of employee that you have and the type of business that you have is going to be the right answer for you. The way that we have ours structured maybe isn't the exact right way, but if you ever want a copy of these, please let me know and I'll give you one so you can see what one looks like. So the next thing that we want to talk about are supports. Supports that you want to have in place for both yourself as well as your employee. And when we look at supports, and this is for any employee, we look at what it would take to make the person successful in the job that they have. So for IT, we give them tools like a laptop. It has software on it, an actual toolkit, because everybody needs a number 2 Phillips screwdriver, a cell phone, some company swag. I mean, you kind of get the idea here. But those are some of the supports that they get to help them do their job. The company itself has policies in place that define how things have to work. We also have a ton of SOPs, or standard operating procedures, to keep everybody on the same page and doing all the tasks the same way. So having the right types of support in place is imperative for both an employer and an employee, be they neurotypical or diverse. With a neurodiverse employee, there are some specific supports you may need to think about, and they're going to fall into 3 distinct categories. They're going to be interpersonal communication, planning and organization, and sensory and motor processing. Many of these will also help your typical employees, so it's not going to be extra work. It's things that should be in place just to make your company better for everybody involved. And the other thing I want to mention is, depending on your state and depending on your county, you may have access to a job coach or a support person who is very familiar with neurodiversity and can help you out with some of this stuff. And then depending on your employee as well and which agency that they're with, they may be familiar with that employee. So you might get really lucky and get a support person that not only knows the employee, but can give you very specific things that will help out really quick for you. So they can help you as an employer to address specific supports that are going to be needed. So never be afraid to ask. All right, so let's talk about interpersonal communication, because this is a big one. About 93% of how we as humans communicate come from facial expression, the intonation and inflection of the words that we use, and only about 7% come from the words themselves. So I know every single one of us have written an email, we've deleted that email, and then we picked up the phone and made a call because what we needed to say to somebody could not be adequately reflected in some text. It just can't. We know when to make that call, but a neurodiverse person may not. Their world literally is like communicating only through email sometimes, and they don't even have emojis. They're not always going to understand body language, or they can misinterpret the body language. So you have to keep in mind that everything is literal to a neurodiverse person. Some common challenges that they're going to face are, again, that literal interpretation of language. They may miss implied meanings, and sarcasm can be just completely lost on them. So try to avoid it. They can be too honest and direct, which kind of seems like that shouldn't be a thing, but it can offend others unintentionally. For example, they may tell a coworker, "You're too loud and I don't like it." And what they actually mean is that, "I'm having trouble concentrating. Could you speak more softly or remind me to wear my headphones?" Completely different conversation was just had there, but that meant the same thing to them, even though it was honest, it was direct. They may neglect to make eye contact or smile when they engage with or speak with others. That can also be offensive for some people because they think they're always mad at them, and that's not the case. They may not know how to make small talk or engage with other people. The other thing is, again, this is mostly with Asperger's, not so much with spectrum, but they may only talk about their areas of interest, and it may be for far too long. They'll actually make you uncomfortable with how long the conversation goes on, and they just need to be reminded of what's appropriate or not. That's all, because they don't know. They may also interrupt others while they're talking. They may not be able to tell when somebody's finished speaking. They may talk too loud, too soft, too fast, or too slow, depending on the person. So keep in mind that neurodiverse people want to interact with you and the people around them. They just don't know that they are offensive or confusing to others. So what type of supports can you put into place that are going to have an effect and an impact for everyone? Well, again, clear and direct language. It's best. That subtle hint, sarcasm, idioms are going to leave many confused. So you just need to be specific with the directives. For example, you would need to say, "Follow the SOP for deployment for all the equipment in the lab Mark Smith. It needs to be finished by this Thursday at 3. Because if you say, "I need you to own the Smith project for Thursday," chances are you're going to walk back to the lab Thursday afternoon to check the status, and you're going to find your neurodiverse employee's name on the boxes, nothing ready to go, and very confused as to why you're mad at them. They put their name on the box. They own it now. So much of the English language is based on idioms. It's a hard habit to break. Be as literal as you can. And when you're not, learn to find some humor in the situation. You're going to find yourself in a couple situations like this until you get the hang of it. So make expectations specific so that there are no misinterpretations of what you're asking. End of day to them means the last minute at the end of the day, not 3 o'clock, not 4 o'clock. So be specific as to what you want. Work buddies. These are fantastic for any company in any situation. When we talk about a work buddy, it's somebody who has been at the organization or company for a while that can guide any new employee through the first month or so. With any employee, they would be there to show them the ropes, answer questions, show how you do things as a company. The difference that they're going to see as a buddy to somebody who is neurodiverse is that they may have to explain when their behavior is inappropriate or unacceptable for work, and they may need to be their buddy for longer than the first month or so. The work buddy would need to understand also that most people on the spectrum will not ask questions. Some will ask some elementary type questions, but they're going to fear being thought stupid because of what they're asking. So if the work buddy can anticipate the types of questions that they would have had as a new employee, they can start a conversation with the neurodiverse person, and that will work out best. It will get them talking, and then it will probably get them to ask more questions as well. So organizational skills or executive functioning is impacted significantly in neurodiverse individuals. Most of us can multitask all day long, shifting our priorities as the need arises. We can see how the work we are doing is a cog in the larger wheel of the company. They may not be able to do it without being explicitly explained that Bob can't onboard the Smith Company because the SOP for employment wasn't completed. You just put your name on the boxes. And again, I have no doubt that you've run into this type of situation before. Tasks not getting accomplished because one team didn't know that they were supposed to start after another was finished, or didn't know where team was with the project. I mean, it happens. So this is where SOPs come in. They're going to help with how things have to flow, as well as a way to track what you're doing. So some common challenges that you're going to find with organizational skills is not knowing how to start an assigned task. So I know you've assigned a task to somebody, but they may not know how to go about starting it. So without an SOP, most people may not know what step 1 is, let alone step 7. So again, this isn't something that's only specific to neurodiverse people. This is any employee that you have. So if you haven't started writing SOPs for everything that you do in your business, start now. It doesn't matter which one that you start with, just start writing them. They're going to have difficulty estimating the time that is needed for tasks. So again, an SOP is going to help with this. When you write it, go through the steps yourself. See how long it takes you. That will give you an approximate time for the task. You can add it on to the SOP. So you kind of have an idea, or at least your new employees will have an idea of how long that particular SOP should take them. Sometimes they will focus on details. So if they have an SOP that they can stick to, they should stay on track without getting too far down the rabbit hole. A lot of people have no idea what finished really is. At what point does the project end, or does the task end? I'm not quite sure. So the SOP that you write should have the finished state in there, and that will eliminate that problem as well. Short-term memory is really bad. And I'm not going to gloss over this one. You can tell them something, and 2 seconds later, it's already gone. Verbal instructions for somebody that is neurodiverse are very difficult. So what you want to make sure of is they're either repeating it back to you right away so that you know that they've got it, or write it down so that they have it. Task priority is also confusing. And again, many people are going to have issues with this. Which thing should I do first, or what makes sense to do first? Again, if you have an SOP, that will have the tasks laid out in exactly the order they should be done, and that will take that issue out of the mix. Multitasking can be difficult, so you'll want to make sure that you have the ability to only assign them one thing at a time until that's finished, and then assign them the next thing. They may not take initiative on their own because they don't know what to do. It's that not knowing how to start a task thing again. So again, if you have SOPs, or if you have a list of things that they need to follow through the day, that will definitely help. They can also act impulsively or panic. And a lot of that stems from not knowing what to do next, or not knowing what to do at all. And as long as you have tasks in place, SOPs in place, it cuts down on the impulsivity and panic from not knowing what to do. So supports for all of this, again, I covered a couple of them, but let's hit them again one more time. So when possible, let them focus on one task or project at a time. SOPs are an enormous part of that. Break down every one of your projects by SOPs so it is in smaller chunks to handle. Structure everything that you can. SOPs are great. It gives everyone a set of rules to follow. Rules are big in the neurodiverse world. Rules take guessing out. They reduce anxiety. They stop people from panicking. So SOPs essentially are rules. Put them in place, you reduce all of that. So having SOPs can help with almost everything on the organization list. Visual systems are the other thing that's a big thing. They're going to help with everything else that revolves around organization. So visual systems, they can be everything from scheduling of daily tasks Post-it notes, to-do lists, they all help. Some people like color-coded things. It's just whatever works, doesn't matter. What we use Outlook. We use task lists in Outlook. We use scheduling in Outlook. ConnectWise is the software that actually runs most of our business, so you'll see it in our task lists and our projects inside of ConnectWise. And we use Trello boards for everything else. Those can all be color-coded for your people. So if you need somebody that has to have that color-codedness, Trello boards are a great thing to have. And then the other thing is that summarization. Having them summarize a task will gauge their understanding of it and will also make sure that they haven't lost short-term memory of it as well. The last big thing we're going to cover are the sensory and motor supports. So we all have things that make us a little crazy. For me, it's repetitive noises. It actually drive me out of my skin. They make me angry even, destroys my concentration. Many neurodiverse persons will experience hypo or hypersensitivity to various things. It can interfere with their job, much like my aversion to repetitive noise. I would actually hunt it down and waste 3 hours trying to find something like that. So some things that might get them, the fluorescent lights can be a big one. They actually hum and they cycle and flicker. Some neurodiverse people can actually see that and hear it. The sound of somebody on a mechanical keyboard can be completely distracting for some, that click-clack thing that they have. Sometimes it smells. It can be from perfume or cologne to tobacco smoke. Those can actually make people physically ill from the sensitivity of it, and it's not just neurodiverse people. Auditory processing issues can be common. So we already talked about that short-term memory thing. A lot of it is because they're not understanding what they're hearing or they're not processing it properly. So taking part in group conversations would be difficult. They may have trouble hearing one person, especially when multiple people are talking. If there's distracting background noise happening, they might have trouble hearing as well. Some of the actual motor skills can also suffer. Handwriting is the most prevalent, so the person may not be able to write notes during meetings, or their handwriting skills might be childlike or not legible. But with penmanship not being taught anymore in schools, you may not notice the difference with that. So those are the most common challenges that you're going to encounter with sensory and motor. The supports that you can put in place to counteract them, again, they're going to benefit everyone, and they can actually benefit your clients or the people that you deal with as well, which is kind of surprising. But so let's go through them. So everybody has things that make them crazy. We already touched on one of mine. So nothing is ever going to suit everybody, but some simple things like allowing for task lighting, especially if you have overhead lights that are fluorescent, is going to be important. Allowing for headphones to cut down noise or simple supports. And you can get noise canceling headphones almost anywhere anymore, and they're actually getting fairly inexpensive. Just be sure that you have somebody's full attention when you need to impart a task or request to them. Allowing for short breaks are another great thing to do, because it almost acts as a reset and lets them come back and be completely normal again. And that can be something as simple as a quick walk around the block or the office. Maybe all of their materials, even their notes that you're taking in meetings, are going to be typed instead of written. So you may have to have some type of tablet for them to be able to do that with. Or just give them a different spot in the office to sit. Maybe there's a quieter spot or someplace where they can get behind a closed door during some parts of the day. It will help them out. All right. So let's talk about some reasonable accommodations. The employment aspects of the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA Title I, state that employers are required to make reasonable accommodations for an employee with a disability, as long as the accommodation does not pose an undue hardship to the employer. As an employer, undue hardship considerations would be things like what the requested accommodation is and the cost involved. So if it's something that you just simply cannot afford, that's an undue accommodation or undue hardship. what size your company is, and the resources that you have available to you. So again, if you have a teeny tiny little company and somebody's asking for something that you simply either can't afford, doesn't fit your building, whatever the case might be, that's an undue hardship and you can say no to that. Also, the type of business that you have and the types of jobs that you have available. So if somebody comes in and says, I need an accommodation for my job, but it actually changes the job that you're trying to fill, that's an undue hardship as well. You do not have to change the type of job that you have. So what the ADA does not cover is changing the job function or lowering the standards that you require for the job. So again, all you're doing is adding a support so that they can do the job that you have available as efficiently as possible. But if they can't actually do the job, then they're not your employee. So a couple accommodations that we've put into place. We have accommodations actually for every employee in some shape or form. We actually have somebody with one of those nasty mechanical keyboards because they like it. It's fine. I don't have to hear it from my office, so we're good. So we have, however, put in a few into place for our neurodiverse employee specifically. So we bought a building about 2 years ago, and we opted to use recessed LEDs instead of fluorescents. We also have a lot of natural light available to us. So lighting is a big thing for especially the autistic, so you have to be careful with that. Don't be surprised if you find them or any other IT person working in the dark. Apparently that's just part of who we are. Allowing our employees to wear headphones while working or to have music playing in their office. We allow for different work hours. So instead of 8 to 5, he works 7 to 3:30. It gives him some extra quiet time in the morning. Plus, it's the added benefit of always having coffee ready for the rest of us, which is fantastic. He has a different chair than the rest of us. Now, to be fair, everybody in the office has a different chair. It's something that's, comfortable for them. He's shorter. He likes blue. His chair reflects that. His spot's also in a quieter corner of the office that doesn't have as much foot traffic or ambient noise. Just makes it more comfortable for him. We've also allowed access or pay for access to a financial planner for all of our employees. So knowing how to handle money, budget, or plan for future can be daunting for anyone, let alone somebody who's neurodiverse. So we offer the financial planner to everybody available. So a few other accommodations that you may want to allow or put into place are job coaches. We talked about those previously. The ability to work from home. Again, with us being in IT, we can work pretty much from anywhere. Not everybody has that accommodation, but you might want to include that. Visual clues for tasks or timed events. Those can be anything from, post-it notes that you have on the wall to remind you for things to a Trello board, whatever works. You may want to have a reminder app that sends them reminders. And again, that can be anything from having, things scheduled inside of Outlook and it's just sending them a reminder to their phone or something else. We have an air purifier in our office. It's actually great for allergens. So it gets rid of a lot of the dander from the dog that we have. I'm going to hit on that one again in a minute. But also just the regular, dust and dirt and things like that. You might want to have a white noise machine or a fan, or on the flip side of that, the noise canceling headphones. Some people like the noise, some people hate the noise. Support animals are another one. Some people, especially neurodiverse people, have anxiety or complex PTSD that goes along with it, and support animals can really help with that. We have a dog at the office. He spends time with all of our employees through the day. And sometimes it seems like he shows up when they need it the most or they just need a break. Either way, it's a great way for the employee to take a break, to relax for a few minutes, kind of reset themselves, and then get back to work. So those are a couple of the things that we took a look at. We really like them. They work for us. Apologies. You guys can probably hear the train. It's really loud today. And then that brings me up to my last slide, which is, does anyone have any questions? And I'm actually going to unmute everybody here. All right, everybody is unmuted. So
I
if
just
you
wanted
have,
to say everything that you said is applicable, not just for neurodiverse employees, but for everybody. If everybody were onboarded the way that you onboard your neurodiverse people, which I assume you also do for your non-neurodiverse, just think what the entire workforce would be like.
yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of the point to all of it, is that we looked at what wasn't working, and a lot of it, and again, this is mostly for Connor, what wasn't working for Connor, what he needed, what seemed to work. And then when we onboarded the first person with the supports that we put into place for that onboarding, everybody was like, oh, this is the best thing ever. It's great. I understand everything. I know where everything is. It just seemed to go better.
I think it's great. I really do.
Does anybody else have any questions? All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, that's all I have. Hopefully it was beneficial for everybody, and I will see you at our next webinar. All right. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.